Morning, everybody. It is 8:10 a.m. It is April 24th. I keep saying this every day, but this market is nuts. All right. Now, yesterday, we gapped up, but then we closed near the lows. We actually hit in futures, okay, in futures and in this SPY, actually, last week's highs. So we went all the way up to last week's highs. I talked about that, how that 59.50 level would be a big level to contend with, and that's all that the markets could really muster was to go up there after a gap up, and then it sold off basically. Now, in pre-market, we're inside yesterday's session, but we're at the lows. We actually made new lows in the overnight, but yeah. So just the nuts market, right? Because it's so headline sensitive. The Secretary of Treasury was talking yesterday. He got asked some questions. Maybe I think he said a couple of things of 2 to 3 years that these talks with China will pan out. Certain other things I don't think they liked. So who knows? But we're at a pivotal level. Very low conviction on what the market will actually do in the next week or so, just because of where we're at. So that's where we're at. So without further ado, let's get into this. Welcome to my channel. My name is Stephen Gonzalez. I use market profile and volume profile to find structure in these markets, along with supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That is how I look at markets. How to show you how when I look at markets, I just quickly look at these indicators that I like to look at, and helps me just arrange data in a way that's easy for me to just get a plan. All right, and then you'll see that later on. All right, so hopefully you join me every morning. All right, give you the market news, the lowdown, the story, the leaders and the laggards, the economic calendar, and we later on get into daily charts. Look at the triple-headed monster, which is the bond market, the VIX, and the dollar, and we get in a little bit. We'll get into the futures analysis. That's the ES and the Nasdaq, and I will give you long and short trade scenarios. Okay, you could use, you could not use it as a barometer based on volume profile, market profile, in certain levels. I come up with plans. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we just get right into futures? I'll just here and see who's leading the pack. Now, gold did pull back a little bit, and people are buying that dip. Gold's back up 1.66%. Crude's up 1.35. 30-year bonds being bought should send yields a little lower. Nasdaq's flat. VIX is flat. We're at a 28 VIX. Silver is pretty much flat, down 1.10, which is in silver terms, that's like 3 cents. So that's really flat. ES down 0.17. Russell down 0.24. The Dow's down 0.45. The dollar's down 0.47. 10-year yield is down almost 1%. Bitcoin's down 1%. Ethereum's down 2%. Okay, moving on to the Mag 7 Plus. Leader here, AMD up 0.31. Amazon up 0.30. This is not much of leaders, but that's what, and Nvidia. So it seems like semis. All right. Now, who's lagging? We got Tesla down 0.36, JP Morgan down 0.37, Boeing down 0.50, Coinbase down 0.70. Obviously following Bitcoin. Okay. Moving on to the sectors to go to the market. Who's the leader today? Semis, no surprise there. They are up 1.35%. Okay. Followed by technology up 0.27. Right. So that's why I have both these up there, even though technology encompasses semis, but semis are such a big part of the market, you just need to separate them. So they're up. Technology is only up a little bit. Energy's up a little bit, and then you got some laggards here. Communications down 0.11. Remember, Google reports after the close. Discretionary down 0.13. These are not big numbers that are down. Industrials down 0.32, and financials down 0.57%. Okay. Now we're going to move on to some news and economic calendar here. Look at the earnings as well. So today's economic calendar, we have durable goods at 8:30, Chicago Fed, jobless claims, and at 10 a.m. we have existing home sales. Now, most times that doesn't really move the market much. Sometimes it does. You just have to be aware of it. Fed Kashkari speaking at 5, which won't affect anything that's after the market close. And actually, futures are closed at 5 p.m. for that hour, so really can't affect the market unless he says something crazy and the market opens and gaps up, gaps down. We'll have to see. So that is your economic calendar. Now, as far as the earnings, all right, the earnings, we have after the close yesterday, you had IBM, ServiceNow, Chipotle, Newmont, Texas Instruments, Lam Research. So Texas Instruments and Lam Research is kind of like semis. So I can only assume they had good earnings because semis are up this morning. Now, before the open today was American Airlines, Freeport McMoran, Nokia, Southwest, Merck, PepsiCo, Nasdaq, Valero, Union Pacific. Okay. Today after the close, Intel, Alphabet, which is Google, T-Mobile, Boyd, and Skechers. All right. Tomorrow before the open, you have AbbVie, Colgate, Palmolive, and what else here? Charter. So those are the ones that you're gonna look out for. Okay. Back to news. All right, let's talk there. Let's look at some stocks that moved around here. IBM stock fell 6.7% after the tech giant posted better than anticipated earnings and revenue for the first quarter, but maintained its full year guidance. Southwest stock fell 4% after the carrier said its plans to cut its schedule in the second half of the year and pulled its guidance for earnings before interest and taxes in 2025 and 2026. Hasbro stock rose 7.8% after Tomic reported first quarter revenue beat expectations. Chipotle stock fell 3.7% after the Mexican food chain missed first quarter revenue estimates. Texas Instruments stock soared. There you go, semis, right? Stock soared 8.4% after the semiconductor manufacturer reported first quarter earnings that exceeded expectations and provided optimism for the second quarter. PepsiCo stock fell 0.6 after the soft drink giant cut its annual core profit forecast as it grapples with disruptions into its supply chain. Merck stock rose 1.3% after the drug maker said its first quarter adjusted profit rose as lower cost helped offset a decline in sales. Procter and Gamble, no, that's not Procter and Gamble, but they also had earnings. ServiceNow stock leapt 9% after the software beat first quarter profit estimates with subscription revenues of 3,005 million. All right, Dow stock rose 2.1 after the chemicals firm posted a surprise profit. All right, there's those. Now we'll look at a little more news here. Now we just talked about PepsiCo. We just Procter and Gamble. See, they lower his annual forecast, so Procter and Gamble is down. They're down about 0.74. They were down more earlier. Let's see here. Bristol Myers posted better than expected quarterly revenue on strong cancer drug sales. And let's see what else is going on here. We already talked about a bunch of those, so I'm not going to repeat. Let's see here. Las Vegas Sands, a casino operator, surpasses analysts' expectation for first quarter profit on Wednesday as strong demand from a Singapore business offset slowing market growth in Macau. All right, Newmont, the world's biggest gold miner, beat Wall Street estimates for first quarter on profit on Wednesdays as a rally of bullion prices helped offset low production. Sending its shares up after hours, Newmont's quarterly average realized price for gold jumped 41% to $2,944 per ounce. All right. Let's see. Adobe, the software maker, said it's adding image generation artificial intelligence models from OpenAI and Alphabet's Google to its Firefly app and bringing the app to mobile devices. Adobe said that Firefly users will be able to generate images with OpenAI's GPT image generation, Google Imagen 3, Google VO2, and Flux 1.1 Pro. In addition to a new version of its own proprietary Firefly image model, the company plans to offer models from partners including FAL.ai, Luma, and Runaway in the coming months. Okay, some price heat price start Analyst recommendations here. AT&T, RBC raised its target price to 30 from 28. Boeing, Morgan Stanley raised its target price 185 from 175. General Dynamics Corp, TD Cowen raised its target price 290 from 275. Texas Instruments, Jefferies cuts target price to 155 from 185. Okay. There's that. Now the juice, just certain things, certain Japan to resist Trump efforts to form trade bloc against China. Also in the news is Trump's not considering adjustments to automotive components, automobile tariffs. Okay, because earlier it says Trump, this was yesterday, Trump to exempt car makers from some U.S. tariffs. Lowering China tariffs depends on them. Trump tariff rate for China could come over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Possibly we'll meet with Putin after Saudi trip. Trump, if we do not make a deal with China, it's okay. Trump, Canada car tariffs increase possible. Not considering adjustments to automobile components, automobile tariffs. But this morning, let's look at risk here because I know that was up there. The U.S. is considering at 7:39 this morning exemptions for some China auto parts. So that's interesting. So market's been kind of moving sideways. Okay. And yesterday we broke the little uptrend that we were in. All right. Just want to bring you to hourly chart real quick before we get in. I've been doing this daily with you guys, so we'll just look at that real quick. Just to get a little feel of where we're at here. This is your ES on an hourly. So this is the anchored VWAP from these lows, and you can see we haven't really tested it at all because of all these gap ups. Okay, so it's going to continue to move, and let's see if that acts as support. You can see the gap here that was formed yesterday. Okay, now what did we do? We gapped up, right? And then we rose right up to where? Last week's highs, 54.97. That was that level over here, that resistance, right? That I talked about. Once we hit that, we sold off. Went all made a low here. Didn't hit the anchored VWAP from this low. This is the month to date VWAP, we're over. Week to date VWAP, we are over. Okay, you can see the orange is last week's range. Remember Monday we dipped below, came back, took the move back, pulled back, and then it was just a gap up, and that's what we're doing. Right? So where we're at right now, basically, let's just do it here. A little fib. I think it's F8 here. Let's see if that's F8. Nope, that's not F8. It's F3. I just want to do a little of the range. No. Alright, I thought I remembered it. I don't. Let's do Fibonacci. Oh, F8. I did hit F8. Alright, I did hit that. Alright, so let's just go from here and just see where we're at. So check that out. So from last week's range, look where we're at. Here's 50% is right there at 53.73 prices right here. So we're basically in the middle of last week. Not the best area you want to be in. Okay, it's really not. Okay, really not. We could do I think it's let's do a little volume profile. Of this gap up, right? We'll just look at a little volume profile. So you can see the value area is here, right? Most traded price is right there, 54.09 of this gap up, 54.09. Okay, and you can see it's kind of like the midpoint. So that's that little 1 hour analysis I've been giving you guys. All right, so we're gonna get right into daily charts now. do these daily charts. Okay. So we have this downtrend line, right? And look where we hit yesterday. Right there. That just lines up. That's why it's nice to have trend lines, right? Because trend lines are so amazing sometimes how they work, right? And sometimes somehow they always line up with some kind of support area, right? And that was that last month's lows right there. I said that yesterday that that's going to be a hard level to get through. Okay, and you still have this gap above. Okay, so you can see we gapped up yesterday, opened here, pushed up, closed at the lows, leaving a gap here, right? So we opened we closed at 535 yesterday. We're at 534.80 right now. 534.80. So see, we're like at yesterday's lows. So it's very, like I said, we're just not in a great area here. It's not like we broke through the trend line and then we pulled back here. We gapped up, hit this, and bound, took uh, pulled back, right? So let's just say you were long from here. You probably took profits here, right? Once there was some selling, you're probably like, you know what? I'm taking my profits. All right, let's look at futures and to see just like the price action in more detail here. You could see, look at this. You came right to the 90 MA daily, pushed off of it, and you're just holding the lows from yesterday, right? Holding the lows from yesterday. Let's look at the Qs. So Qs broke this trend line, so we can get rid of that. Okay, you have another secondary trend line right here. And where did the Qs come? Anchor VWAP 2024 is right there. That is last week's highs, right? So came in there, and that was that big level I also said in the NASDAQ. Okay, I said this is a big resistance level, and it acted as resistance yesterday. You can see this is last month's lows. We actually came into last month's range, and then we close outside of it, right at the 20-day simple moving average. Okay. Now again, look, we're right here's last week's range, the orange, and we're right here. And we close right here, close to the midpoint of last week. Okay. Let's look at futures. All right. So you can see it's just like there's yesterday, and we're right in the middle of yesterday's basically 24-hour session. All right. So just not in a great area. Still in the middle of this mess. So that's what's going on with the daily charts. All right, now let's move on to the triple-headed monster here, and that's your bond market and your dollar. Okay. So let's look at this bond market here, the 10-year. Let's see here. So that was that basis trade, right? Where there was margin calls on some hedge funds that caused a spike, right? Now we came back up, and now look, we're pushing down again. So it's really, I don't even have to see this. Look at this. If I put a profile on this, this would really probably be by the most traded price, right? We keep coming back to this area, okay? So we just have to watch that bond market, all right? We have to watch it. We'll look at the VIX now. I'm sorry, the dollar first. And that dollar looks like, got a nice little move up to 99.93, and today it's down 0.42. Okay. Remember, these lows go back almost 5 years where we just went to a low. Okay. Look at the VIX. That's our fear gauge. We are under a 30 VIX. Remember, VIX is 30 days out. 30 days out. And remember, I said we were in this range where we're holding on to last week's range. Okay. So the VIX, you should still get some nice moves in the market. All right. Volume is a little still not the best. And we had very, very high volume over the last week. and now we're at like 82 and 62% relative volume. Here, I'll show you that right there. ES 62% of the. I think I have this at a 20-day average. So we're at 62% of that, which is pretty low. We're at 80% in the Nasdaq. Okay, let's see it crude. Where's crude at? Crude is 70%. Okay, so volumes are relatively lower. Okay, so sometimes the tempo of the market, you can tell, is just like the tempo's not there, but the volatility is there because of the ranges. All right, now we're going to move over to the market profile and volume profile analysis. Let's real quick. I just want to see this just dropped here, this news. So it says senior aides across Trump admin holding high-level meetings over China curbs on rare earths critical to huge range of U.S. economic activity. Deep concern about impact. No easy answers. Companies relying on reserves that won't last forever may help explain. Trump Blink WAPO reporter on X. Okay. And jobless claims came out, and it looks like they came in as expected. Yes, 222 forecast came out 222. All right. So, like I said, let's move over to the market profile. I just wanted to share that with you. Give me a sec while I switch over. We'll go right over to the ES and just look at what we're doing here. And this is your market profile and your volume profile analysis here. This market's been nuts with these gap ups. So today we're not gapping. Let's look at what happened yesterday. Okay. So yesterday, you can see overnight session, right? We opened up, pushed up. 3 30-minute bars right here tried to break this 59.50 level basically. Last week's highs. Couldn't do it. And then literally went down. Boom. And then closed right here. Okay. So first attempt, couldn't do it. Remember what I said over here. Couldn't do it the last time either. So just a critical resistance level for right now. And this is a poor, basically very poor profile here. Poor. There's not a lot of excess here. There is a couple ticks of excess here, but it's multiple tries up there that failed. Okay. Now if we're going to look at key levels today, what are we going to look at? Right. You can see the overnight low 53.55 dipped down here. Okay. This weekly profile is really not helping much. It just doesn't look. It looks two different distributions. You can see this distribution starts with a gap up, so you have two profiles. This you could tell right now, right? Look at this session. Very balanced profile, right? That just means that buyers and sellers are agreeing on this price. And guess where they're landing? 53.95, which happens to be the most traded price of yesterday. So remember, these most traded prices, VPOCs, they're like magnets. And once people agree on this price, they keep trading at this price, and the market seems to gravitate towards these prices like magnets. All right. So that's what's going there. Now let's look at this. That's last week's highs and happens to be yesterday's highs. Okay. Then you have yesterday's lows, 53.85. Overnight low, 53.55. Overnight high, 54.35, I believe. Okay. Price is here. Now check this out. That's in the middle of the overnight session, and it's at the most traded price of yesterday. Okay, so this is it's probably going to become the most traded price of the week if it stays here. You can see the most traded price, the ultimate balance level is around 53, call it 10, okay? But it's really an area of 53.14 to 5300, okay? Month to day VWAP, week to day VWAP right here as well, all right? So the market, what it needs to do is take this most traded price of the week and move it up here. That would be a little bullish. That way you could accept price up here and then try to move higher. Okay, if it can't do that, you're going to return back here. Okay, but for right now, we're holding this gap and just have to see what happens. Okay, we do have demand zone here, right here. All right, most traded price here. And the 50% of yesterday, let's just call it 54.40, kind of lines up with the overnight highs. All right, and then we have that big resistance 59.50 supply in last week's highs happens to be this week's high so far. Okay, so there's our levels, and I'm just going to go right into some scenarios here. All right, first thing I'm going to start off with is we're above ultimate balance. That would give me a bullish bias. All right, so here we go. So prices here, don't like where that's at. Okay, I really don't like where that's at. What would I like to see? Okay, a couple things could happen here. You can push up into this supply, pull back into this demand zone, pull back into the demand zone, right? Hold it, higher low, and start to try to make your way back up to at least test the overnight highs and see if we can go up and test this week's highs and last week's highs and try to break this level to try to go into this gap that's unfilled up here. Okay. Remember, Google reports after close, so the market could move up and then get pushed up by Google. Okay, don't know. Now, the other thing would be, remember, I'm going to be bullish above the ultimate balance level down here. Okay, so we could also come down. Let's say if this is quick, fill that gap, touch here, and then I think we would probably rise up into here. I don't think we go all the way up here. Okay, that's also another thing. Now that just depends if this happens quick and the market recovers, right? If we start accepting price down here, that's not going to be a good thing. Okay, that's what I'm looking at for the longs. All right, let's look at short side. All right, so what could happen here? Well, we can push up into this supply, get some lower highs here, come through this. If we bust that demand, you're going to challenge the overnight lows, 53, 55, right there. Okay, if you break that, fill that gap, you're going to probably test this ultimate balance. Okay, that could be the move, but if you break this and start to hold, that will not be good for markets. Not be good. Now, of course, what could we do? We could also, if we get some bullish movement here, and we go up into the supply, into this resistance again, maybe the market tries, and then we just pull back, and we go back into the middle of the range. Like, I'm not a fan of that, right? Shorten in there, because I'd rather be long today, but I have to see how the market setting up. Okay, that is your ES. All right, let's move over to the Nasdaq. I didn't know why I did that. I don't need to do that. Let's go to the Nasdaq's chart. Now I'm just going to move this here. I'm going to move the chart down a little bit. Okay. Okay. So let's look at the Nasdaq. All right. So this Nasdaq has demand down here, and it has kind of this 186, 124 to 159.05. So basically 186.24 to 186. You have demand here. Okay, it's the overnight low. We're well off the overnight lows right now. However, this profile is very balanced, just like the ES. Where are we now? Check that out. Most traded price of yesterday. That's the magnet that I talked about. Okay, prices love to just get attracted to those prices. Okay, we are above ultimate balance, which is 184, which also has the month-to-day VWAP and week-to-day VWAP here. Okay, you can see the gap, right? Now, yesterday we did come up to an area that was supply. You can see the resistance here. That doesn't look good. And then we came up here into supply, and we kind of sold off from there. Okay, so let's just get a cleaner level here. So this box right here, okay, I'm going to put a little box here. This has actually last week's highs, like this. Okay, this happens to be the most traded price of the rolling year. All right, and that price is around 193. Okay, so that's a big, big level. The Nasdaq needs to get over that and to make any kind of bullish run. Okay, now this is the midpoint of yesterday, right up with the overnight highs. Okay, so it's very simple. It's very similar to the ES. Okay, very simple. And let's look at it together. Start with the bullish side. As long as we're above 184, my bias is bullish. Okay. Now, the Nasdaq is in the upper portion of the overnight. Okay, most traded price is right here. So what could happen in the Nasdaq is this: you're in supply right now. If you break that supply, okay, pull back to yesterday's most traded price of 188.81, and you find support, you could work yourself up into the to yesterday's highs 191.65 and try to test this big level and last week's highs. Okay, you could also, because price is right here, you could also come into the supply, sell off into the most traded price around 187.50 right here. Okay, this happens to be still an unfilled gap. Okay, so you can just come into here, that could be supportive and also make a move up. You can also come down and partially fill this gap, come into this demand zone and push up. Right below the overnight low would be a gap fill, and you're probably going to head back to 184. So it could happen. Now, if this happens quickly, see, we're much higher in the session here. So if you are down here, that means the market's weak. You could bounce, but you might only get to here. Okay, so that's the bullish side scenarios for this market. Okay, if we're going to talk about bear side, all right, market's right here. We're in supply currently, so we can come into this supply, come up, test and kiss overnight highs, push down, lower high, and now you're going to probably break through the most traded price of the overnight, challenge this demand zone. All right, if you challenge the demand zone and break it, you're now breaking the overnight lows, 185.95. If you fill the gap, right, you're probably going to visit 184 month-to-day VWAP, week-to-day VWAP. That's a big, big level. My guess, we probably bounce or balance here. Now, if you break this, hold under it, this could really fall and possibly test last week's lows, 181.16. But I don't know, right? I don't know. So these are just the scenarios. Okay? Because even if we come back all the way up here, that means we're probably pretty strong. The only thing in this case is at such a big level. If you do some higher lows, you could possibly push back down. That wouldn't be my favorite, but that also could happen. Okay? That is the scenarios. All right. If you enjoyed that analysis, please smash that like button. That would mean a lot to me. And of course, you could join me every morning and just get the story of the markets. Right? Get the market news, the economic calendar, the leaders and the laggards. The story. The story is always important in the market. Now, this story is a crazy one because every day there's a different story. All right. So, hopefully, we got our plans, you like them, and we're going to stay patient. Right? Like right now, like I said, it's very tricky. We're really not by big levels right now. And we just gapped up twice to move up into a big resistance level and backed off. So if I really had to predict what I think will happen today, is we'll be range bound today. Today we're probably going to take a rest. All right, you got Google earnings after the close. So just be, and anything can happen, but that probability wise, I would think would be what we do unless there's a news catalyst. Okay, you can never plan for a news catalyst. All right, so hope everybody has a great day. Remember, no trade's a trade. Hopefully, you stay green. All right, or flat. Have a great day, and I'll see everybody tomorrow morning.